Welcome to the Table Podcast series with Bridget Johnson. Each month, we give you game-changing conversations about K-12 education and leadership. Join us as top educators, field experts, and administrators share actionable strategies to transform your school community. Let's dive in.
Welcome to The Table, the podcast where student life professionals, educators, and change makers come together to share stories, insights, and ideas for building communities where everyone belongs. I'm your host, Bridget Johnson, founder of the Dean's Roundtable and longtime student life professional. Each episode, we'll hear from people doing the hard, hopeful work of creating more just, compassionate, and restorative communities. So pull up a chair and let's get started. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Marvin W. Berkowitz. Dr. Berkowitz is the inaugural Sanford N. McDonald Endowed Professor of Character Education and co-director of the Center for Character and Citizenship at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Over his decades-long career, he has authored or edited more than 100 works, co-founded the Journal of Character Education, and received countless awards for his leadership and research. His latest book, Primed for Character Education, distills years of research and practice into 6 clear design principles for schools seeking to shape purposeful learning environments, authentic relationships, empowerment, and long-term growth. I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much, Marvin, for joining us. How are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be on. This is going to be fun. I look forward. Your mission so perfectly aligns with the kind of work that I've been doing for probably 4 decades. But I have one correction for you. Well, actually,
Yes.
I have 2 corrections.
Uh-oh,
I
2
re
corrections?
Oh yeah, but neither are a bad thing.
Okay.
I retired from the McDonald professorship about a year ago, and
Ah,
I'm now called the Founders Professor at the University of Missouri
ooh,
St. Louis. Now, the McDonald one was more prestigious.
got it.
And Primed was not my latest book as of this week. There's the new one.
Oh,
There's the new one. But this is for
woohoo!
how to help youth sports coaches use the same model to help build
I didn't know
character in young
that.
athletes. Yeah, it just came out
Okay,
this week.
now we have to. Now that'll be a sidebar later on. I'll have to talk to you about that because I have some things there too. I had no idea. Well,
I
thank
know.
you.
Well, no, it just came out this week. You said when you said his latest book, it was
Look,
true as of a few days ago, but it's not anymore.
fair enough. So thanks for sharing all of that with me. And so excited to have you here, Marvin. I mean, you spent decades in the world of moral development and character education from Harvard
Hmm.
to Air Force Academy to your leadership at UMSL.
Yep.
But before we get into your prime framework and now for student athletes too, I'm super excited to talk about that. But what drew you into this work in the first place?
Well, I kind of didn't know for a long time. My style of living is I just sort of meander through the things that happen to me and enjoy them when they happen, take advantage of them when they happen, and so on. Um, and it kind of evolved. So, as an undergraduate, I studied psychology. I was always
Okay.
interested in people's minds. Why do people do what they do? Why are they the way
Mm-hmm.
they are?
Yeah.
And then when I went to grad school, I wanted to study developmental psychology to
Okay.
see how people develop. How do you get from that, you know, egg cell or a sperm cell all the way to a fully mature functioning human being? And what's that psychological journey like?
Mm.
And I think because of my upbringing, I was always interested in ethics and right and wrong and
Okay.
having a moral compass, and that was always important to me.
Okay.
Um, I'm Jewish. In our home, there was a lot of the values of Judaism, ancient values of ethics
Mm-hmm.
and morality and so on, of charity
Sure.
and so on, justice. And so I got interested in philosophy,
Okay.
but I hated the philosophy courses I took as an undergraduate, so I dropped that. Um, and I was going to be a math major because I was really, really good at math. But when I hit calculus, I said, this is not math. This is philosophy of numbers. I'm done with this. And, and so I
Same, my
I
friend,
went
same.
back to psychology. Actually, the first psychology class I took was a big lecture hall, like intro
Okay.
to psychology at a big
Yep.
state university.
Mhm.
And it was stupid because the professor got up the first day and said, "You don't really need to come to lecture, just read the book and show up for the tests." And
Oh
I thought,
man.
"Isn't that why I'm going to college?" So I dropped it. And then later on, when I figured out, math wasn't going to work and so on, and philosophy wasn't going to work, I should go back to psychology. I like that. And I gutted through the big lecture course and then loved it from then on, and went to grad school to study developmental psychology.
Okay.
And it was in grad school that I encountered first, well, no, as an undergraduate, I discovered Jean Piaget and this notion of
Mm,
developing through stages of thinking about the world that are logically different. That intrigued me.
okay.
And then when I went to grad school for developmental psychology, I discovered Lawrence Kohlberg and his stages of moral thinking and cognition, and how as
Mm-hmm.
we go through our lifespan, we get more and more complex and more effective and logical in the way we think about moral issues. And that just caught me. So
Gotcha.
I did my master's degree, my dissertation on that, and then I
Okay.
got the great opportunity to go to Harvard and do my postdoctoral studies with Kohlberg, with the man who came
Oh,
up with
no
the
way.
theory. Yeah, oh, that was
That's awesome.
transformative. And that's how I got into it. And that's why I spent the rest of my career, first 20 years at Marquette University in Milwaukee
Mm-hmm.
as a psychologist, studying developmental psychology, doing basic research, theory, and so on. And then I started getting more and more interested in being applied. I dabbled a little bit in parenting models, then
Okay.
a lot in schools.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I got seen for that. And I got headhunted to come be the McDonald Professor of Character Education in a college of education. Did that for 25 years.
Well, look at you. And
Yeah,
now you retired for a year, but
semi-retired.
semi-retired.
I
Let me be
have a
clear,
part-time, the
semi-retired.
founder's professorship is a part-time position that
Got it.
you have to apply for, and I got
Okay.
it. And so do
All
it for
right.
3 years, and then they throw you out. Then
Uh-oh.
you turn into a pumpkin at that point.
All right, we'll check in with you before you turn into a pumpkin.
Okay.
So the Prime framework, your book lays out six key components:
Mhm.
prioritization, relationships, intrinsic motivation, modeling, empowerment, and developmental pedagogy. Can you give us the big picture overview of how these pieces fit together and why you believe they're essential for schools today?
Yeah, let me back up first though and give you a little
Okay.
context for
Yeah.
it. Okay. When I was brought to the University of Missouri St. Louis to work in a college of education
Mm-hmm.
to do character education, my training said the first thing I need to do is look at all the research and find out what do we know? What do we already know about character education? So Dr. Melinda Beer, Mindy Beer, and she and I are the co-directors of the Center for Character and Citizenship at UMSL. Um,
Okay.
I hired her onto this project, and it's supposed to be for a year or two because she was in transition
Mm.
from one job to another. And it's now been 26 years. It hasn't ended. But we did a project called What Works in Character Education, doing exactly what I said, trying to collect all the data and so on. So my focus has been on, as a developmental psychologist, let's figure out what really affects children's character development, because there's so many folks out there doing things that feel good, look good, shiny, sparkly, popular, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but either have no effect or sometimes actually undermine their goals.
Yeah.
And I'm a psychologist and I'm a researcher, social scientist. I didn't want that to happen. So
Sure.
that's what I've been doing for the last 25 years. And after a while, um, I got asked to present at a conference in Washington. I think it was 2016, something like that, almost a
Mm-hmm.
decade ago. Um, and my task was to say, what do we know about effective practice in character education? What does research
Okay.
tell us?
Yeah.
And so I decided I couldn't get up there with the What Works project because it was this long list of 30, 40, different practices. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
you can't communicate that in that 1 hour PowerPoint and teach anybody anything. I said, I need to distill it down. And that's when I came up with these principles, superordinate principles, that basically are cubby holes for all of those practices.
Mm-hmm.
They're themes, if you will.
Okay.
Uh, and that was the Prime model.
Okay.
And that got noticed. People noticed it. And then I got asked to write a book on it. And it's exploding around the world right now. I didn't expect that. But the six principles, which was your presenting issue,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, the P is prioritization, which means character education is only going to really be wonderfully, effective in a school is if it's an authentic priority. In fact, the authentic priority of the school.
Okay.
So that means it has to be explicit in the rhetoric. It means
Mm-hmm.
resources have to go to it. Probably most centrally, the leader of the school, him or herself, has to make it their personal purpose as a school leader. It has
Yes.
to be authentically a priority for them as well. And there are other ways to make it a real priority. The R is for relationships. And we found this out after the fact that when you look at the meta-analyses and massive analyses of data on academic achievement, schools
Mm,
that succeed academically, especially those who you would predict, are behind the eight ball because they're under-resourced, their populations may be more transient or have more challenges, English as a second language, special ed, poverty, or whatever,
hmm
that then succeed. One of the things they find is relationships.
Relationships.
Yeah.
So key.
And so we found the same thing in character education, which is less surprising than in academics. But I consider these the molecules or building blocks
hmm
from which you build two things: effective schools,
hmm
including academics,
Yep.
and children's character.
Gotcha.
Um, and if you want schools that are effectively academically and in which children develop character, then you have to have healthy relationships. Now, the catch on this one is the vast majority, almost all the educators I've met, have golden hearts for children. They
Sure. Yeah.
authentically come to this calling, and it is a calling,
hmm
because they care about kids and want to serve kids,
Right.
right? And they assume, therefore, that relationships will happen. I
No.
love kids. I'm a teacher. Of
That's
course
not
it'll
how
happen,
that
right?
works.
Well, it does. It does. It works that way, except for the people who need it most. If you note, I didn't say children, I said people, because adults in
hmm
schools also,
Sure.
including deans of students.
Yes.
I'm sure there are deans of students out there who really need a healthy relationship to
Yes.
tip them over. Not the majority, probably there are exceptions, but
hmm
they're there. There are teachers there, principals there, counselors, all. But mostly we're talking about the kids, because in every school there are kids who desperately need a healthy relationship with an adult, with a best friend, with a mentor, an older buddy, somebody. And
Someone.
those kids are going to fall through the cracks, and they're going to get lost because they're just odd in some way. They look different, they speak differently, they're on the autism spectrum, they have a
hmm
mental illness, um, English is not their first language, they have impulse control issues. I mean, there's all
hmm
sorts of
All sorts
reasons.
of things.
We go
Right.
on and on and on about it.
Right.
Race, gender, religion, just a million reasons why a kid might be different.
Right.
Um, they won't, or they may just be shy, and they don't end up with the friendship. So I say that you have to build these relationships, but you have to be strategic and intentional. It has to be an explicit purpose. Then
hmm
you have to be structural. You have to build structures in schools for relationship building, and then you have to be inclusive. And here by
Yes.
inclusive, I mean more categorically so.
hmm
Um, one of the groups, for instance, that's frequently left out, no bad intentions, it's just this is how it happens, are the non-professional staff in schools. The
Yes.
people who cook the meals, the people who clean the physical space, the secretaries in the office, the bus drivers, and so on. They're often left out. And I know wonderful character ed school after wonderful character ed school who have strategically, intentionally, and structurally built ways to include them too.
That's awesome.
Um, so that's the R. The I is intrinsic motivation. This is the one that really peeves a lot of people because I'm taking away their fun, shiny things, their toys. Um, there's a old joke which I use in the book and elsewhere
hmm
that a man's walking down the street one night. There's a street lamp up out on a
hmm
corner, and he sees underneath it there's a guy looking through the grass. And so as he approaches, he becomes a good Samaritan, and he says, "Hey, buddy, did you lose something?" And the guy
hmm
says, "Yeah, I lost my keys. I can't go home without them." And so the guy who's approaching him says, "Let me help you." He truly becomes a good Samaritan, gets down on hands and knees, and they're looking through the grass. But it's a
Okay.
little tiny patch of grass. It's not that big, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it's quickly apparent there's no keys there. So the guy who came to help him said, "Are you sure you lost your keys here?" And the guy said, "Oh,
hmm
no, no, no. I lost them about a block that way." And the
Like
guy's
what?
mystified. He said, why are we looking here?" And the guy said, "Because the light is better here." That's the metaphor I like to use, the light and the keys. Um, And in fact, on the cover, I have to get up to go get it. I won't do that. But on the cover
Okay.
of the Spanish translation of the Prime book,
Mm-hmm.
that's the image, keys in the street
Yeah,
life. Um,
nice.
and the point is, educators think they're building character, but they run to the light. They go to the things that are shiny and
Shiny,
sparkly.
easy.
Sometimes literally, kid does something good, they give him a shiny, sparkly pencil that smells like a strawberry as a reward. Um, sometimes just figuratively, they give them a Jolly Rancher, or they announce on the loudspeaker, "Hey, everybody, did you hear what Bridget Jones did today? She helped this new girl in school. She's a wonderful person." And the subtext is, and the rest of you are inferior to her, and you should all be jealous of her and want to be like her. Um, and they think this is good stuff, or they
I do.
have an assembly where they trot 6 kids across the stage once a month, say, "These are the kids of character."
Mm-hmm.
Probably the finest elementary school principal I've ever known, Karen Smith, when she switched schools as a principal, she discovered they had a big monthly assembly like that in her school where they'd honor a few kids of character.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Nah, I don't think we're going to keep doing that." And they said,
Okay.
"Why? It's such a feel-good event." I said, "Yeah, you got to think about the messages you're sending. The message we're sending there is that there are 6 good kids of character every month. I want to send the message that there are 200 some odd good kids of character every day in my school. We're
I
not doing
love
it
that.
anymore." Yeah. So the I is for intrinsic motivation. The goal of character education is for your sacred words, your words on the wall, to
Mm-hmm.
go from here into your heart,
Yeah.
inside the kid.
Yep.
We want internalization. And what we know from research is that giving them physical things as rewards for goodness undermines the likelihood that they will become those things. It
Yep.
actually works against you. And there's tons of research to show this. And that there's all sorts of collateral damage for those big assemblies and so on. The kids in the audience are bored, they're angry, they're resentful. I mean, you just, and then I always ask people after you have the assembly, who calls the office the next day? Parents. I say, why? Why do they call? Tell you how great a job you're doing? No, to complain that their kid
I said,
didn't get
why
the
kid? My
award.
kid didn't,
Yeah,
right?
so you're disenfranchising parents too. This is a brilliant pedagogical strategy. So, so what we suggest people do is, one, do an inventory.
Mm-hmm.
What are all the places within the classrooms, within the whole school, everywhere that you give material rewards for kids? And what are all the places you give public acclamation of an individual kid? And then stop it. Stop it. Okay.
Yeah.
People will often ask me, "Marvin, I get it, but how do
How
how
do
do
you?
we how do
Yeah.
we stop?" And I said, "It's really complicated. Get a pen and paper." Okay. And they say, "Ready?" Yeah. Just don't do it. Just stop it. Just don't do it. One principal I knew moved to a new school and found a closet in her office, a storage closet full of boxes of little plastic things to give kids for good behavior. She
Mm-hmm.
donated them all to Children's Hospital and said, "We're done.
Nice.
Give this as gifts to kids. We're not doing this anymore." But people have a lot of trouble with this one because the kids don't care about this stuff. Principal after principal's told me, "Marvin, we finally did it. And guess what?" I said, "I know what." So what? The kids didn't care, right? So how'd you know? Because they never care. It's the adults are addicted to this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the teachers
Makes
are,
them
the
feel good.
parents are. Makes them feel good. Exactly right. And they have to find other ways to feel good. Okay,
You do.
go donate time to charity or something and feel good about that. And stop feeling good while you're destroying kids' character. So we have to replace that. And
Yes.
what we replace it with are a few things.
Okay.
One, the relationships that we've
Yes.
talked about. Kids
Mm-hmm.
need to have these healthy relationships with adults and with the whole school as an institution or the class as a group.
Yeah.
They need to bond to them emotionally. Then those adults, the classroom, and the school have to embody the character you want in kids. They have to be kind. They have to be fair. They have to be respectful. And then
Yep. Have to
lastly, you
model that
use,
behavior. Yeah.
yep, and lastly, you use individual praise.
Got it.
So, if like the example I gave, Bridget Jones was really nice to the, instead I walk up to you, I put my hand on your shoulder and I simply say, "Bridget, I saw what you did. That was so kind." She was scared to death her first day in school, first day at lunchtime. And I said, "You got up and invited her to sit with your friends?" That's what makes this a great school. I'm really proud of you. Please keep it up. Come back tomorrow and do something else
Do it
like
again.
that. No audience, no collateral damage. Does does Bridget Jones need a Jolly Rancher or a strawberry smelling pencil? No, that undermines it.
Yep.
So that's the I. The M is modeling, which we just talked about. You just acknowledged,
Yep.
rightfully so. Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." I say, "Be the character you want to see in your students."
I
Or
love that.
the meaner way I say it is, how dare you ask a child to be something that you can't or
You,
won't be or do yourself? How dare you?
how
Um,
dare you?
and so one of the things we do with educators is we get them to look in the mirror. And we do that strategically. The mirror is an important symbol for us. That
Okay.
you have to look in the mirror every day
Mm-hmm.
and say, how can I be better? How
Okay.
can I be better? I learned that from a inner city kindergarten teacher once told me every afternoon in the middle of the day, I stop and ask myself, how could I have done the day better so far? And my
Wow.
jaw just dropped. I thought,
Yeah.
that's it. That's brilliant. If every educator would do that, schools would be infinitely better and kids would be infinitely smarter and better people
Better
just
people.
by that kind of reflection. But then you make it a personal self project,
Right.
self growth project, that I need to be better. The E is
Mm-hmm.
for empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument is, well, we kind of live in a democracy, but democracies are crumbling around the world. It's not just us. Ours is pretty
Right.
ugly, but you see this in other countries all over. Democracies at a crisis point around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if we want our democracy to thrive, the founding fathers knew it. John Dewey knew it. Walter Parker, as a contemporary, experts in this, you know, say that if we want our democracy to survive, we have to cultivate the character of citizenship. And there's character in there too,
There
right?
is.
Yeah, there are actually four pots of character we often talk about. There's the moral side, being a good person, which I often talk about.
Mm-hmm.
There's the performance side, having
Mm.
an ethic of excellence and trying to do everything you do excellently. There's the civic side, which I just was invoking, which
Mm-hmm.
is, how can I be an ideal citizen to try to promote the common good? Common
Right.
good's an endangered species these
Oh
days.
my goodness,
People are
yes.
acting out of selfishness and
So
hatred and fear.
individualistic. Yep.
Yep. And then the last one is intellectual character, where
Mm.
I value truth, which is also under attack, and I know how to pursue truth and knowledge and so on. So the empowerment one is more about lands on the civic side.
Okay.
Um, and Dewey told us ages ago, teaching kids about character, showing them the video about how Mr. Bill becomes a law, and teaching a civics class is good, but it's not enough. They need to experience the power of their voices in the common spaces, searching for the common good and grappling and cooperating with others to increase the common good. And our schools are hierarchical, authoritarian, disempowering. I
Yep.
tell educators always that you're dictators. You're benevolent dictators, but you're
But
dictators.
dictators nonetheless.
And you need to share power. You need to, voice is the metaphor. Where the mirror is the metaphor for modeling,
Yep.
voice is the metaphor for empowerment. We
Empowerment.
need to empower voices. You are empowering my voice by
Yes,
inviting me onto your podcast.
I love it. But why do you think that leaders are so afraid to do that? What do you think it is?
Um, we're all socialized by our experiences.
Sure.
So part of it is all those leaders were teachers, or almost all of them were teachers, and then
Mm-hmm.
perhaps assistant principals or counselors, and they worked for principals, and this is what they experienced. In fact, I'll
Mm.
tell you an interesting story of this. We did a project in Guadalajara, Mexico, with
Okay.
6 urban, really struggling middle schools.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with the principals and the leadership team. And one of the principals told us the way you're socialized to be a principal in a Mexican school is, one, you have the job for as long as you want it. You don't get moved. You've got it as long as you want it. You stay in the school. And two, you're told, do not get close to anyone.
Oh wow.
Do not build relationships with the staff. You don't invite them to your home for dinner. You don't do things socially with them, and you don't even talk to children, students. That's the teacher's job.
Oh my
He said, this
goodness.
is how you're socialized, at least how he was socialized, how he perceived it. And of course, we were teaching him all these other things.
Right.
And so he decided, because he was working with a leadership team in our project, he decided to take a chance and invite the leadership team to his house for a dinner. And that was the tipping point, because they felt so free at last, free at
Yeah.
last. Good God Almighty, I'm free at last. They felt liberated by this, that they started making suggestions to him and challenging his mandates. And he was blown. He didn't know what to do with this. It's not supposed to happen. But we had trained him well enough that he didn't quash it.
He just went
And
with it.
that was the tipping point. Now, Manuel has relationships with all his teachers. He's open to them about his own life. And he stands in the hallway high-fiving and chatting up kids all the time. And his school has taken a quantum leap to a more functional school.
That's awesome.
So part of it is how you're socialized. And part of it is the fear of this. I was doing a workshop on how to do class meetings, teachers to lead small circle meetings.
Yep.
And two young new kindergarten teachers came up when it was all done at the end of the day. And they said, Dr. Berkowitz, we don't think we can do this. This is with 5-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
I said, why? He said, because if we do that, the children might take over the classroom.
They're
And I looked at
5.
them. I said, you're out of your mind. 5-year-olds wouldn't take up the classroom if you paid them and urged them to. You're their surrogate mommy. Are you
Right.
crazy? How could you actually fear that 5-year-olds will take over your? But there is this fear of losing control. And it's a great expression. Oftentimes you gain control by giving up control.
Giving it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the E, and the D is a little more complicated, but I'll try to make it concise. The D is developmental pedagogy. And basically what it says is when a child enters your educational world, if you're a dean of student, they enter maybe the grade you're assigned to, or they just enter your school. If you're a teacher, they enter your classroom. If you're a principal, the first time they enter the school, whenever they enter your sphere, they are a product of everything that's come before in their lives. They don't come in as a blank slate.
Right.
Okay, we don't erase their lives when they come into school. And how they function, who they are, is a product of all that. But the other point is whenever they leave your sphere, let's say you're dean of students who's assigned to a grade level, right? The end of that year, when they leave, or if you're their dean throughout their whole time in the school, right? You're the dean for the whole school. You've got them for 3 years, 5 years, 4 years, whatever it is, 6 years. When they leave your sphere of influence, they are now a product of everything that came before.
Yeah.
And you're part of that. Your school is part of that. You leave that imprint. So the question is, what can you do to leave a positive, permanent imprint on these kids so that as they move forward, they carry your imprint with them in a positive way for the rest of their lives? So we're educating for the future.
Right.
My good friend Cliff Talbert, people don't know Cliff Talbert, they should look him up.
Okay.
Cliff, you should get him on the show sometime.
Okay.
His first book, Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored, was made into a major motion picture. It was an autobiography. His second book, Last Train North, also further autobiography, was nominated for a Pulitzer. He was invited to speak before the Supreme Court and train them. Nelson Mandela kept his book on his desk, the little book he called it, because it was so inspiring to him, and on and on. And Cliff is a wonderful guy. He took the lessons of living in the segregated Mississippi Delta to how to build community in a positive way. But he often said to me, Marvin, don't teach the kids as they are. Teach to the possibilities in children.
I love
See
that.
the future. Okay. And Margaret Wheatley always said, embrace the possibility. And so that's what developmental pedagogy is about. How do you change your pedagogical practice the way you're a school? So for deans of students, who often are the disciplinarians in schools,
right,
this becomes really critical, because your job as a dean of students in those cases is to do your work of behavior management, discipline, whatever, in a way that when this kid is 30 or 40 or 50, that's a good human being because of the imprint you left. Punishing them won't do it.
right.
Okay, punishing them simply won't do it. I was doing where was I doing it? I did a webinar the other day in another country. Oh, I was doing it. This one was in Indonesia.
Okay.
And one of the question from the audience member was, in our school we use punishment. Is that okay? And my answer was, well, Yeah, it's an effective technique. It's okay if this is what your goals are. You
Mm-hmm.
want kids to hate you. You want them to hate your school. You want them to become more violent. You want them not to internalize your messages about good character and values. If that's your goal, yeah, use punishment. Otherwise, don't do it. Um, so what are the alternatives? Things like restorative practices, and so on, um, that help build a healthy foundation for living a good life, being a good person. That's developmental pedagogy. How do we change the way we are schools with an eye towards the future of who this kid will be someday?
Yeah, so
Those are the six.
I love the six, and you just sparked something in me because I do have a question about that. As someone, I am getting my master's in restorative practices, and it's something that I
Hmm.
feel pretty passionately about. But I also wonder where that balance is, because there are consequences for your actions, right?
Hmm.
And not necessarily, I don't want to dole out punishment, right? That's not my goal. But we also need to raise up students who understand that yes, we want to be restorative. We want to make sure that we're building healthy relationships. You want to make sure that you are valuing community and the people around you and repairing harm. But there also can be consequences for your actions. So,
Hmm.
how do you mitigate the two of those? Because I think in some ways they can fit together. I don't think it has to be a either
Yeah.
or. It can be a both
Yeah.
and, in my opinion. Love your
two
thoughts
part
on that.
two parts to the answer. The first
Okay.
part is restoring the damage you did is a consequence.
Okay.
So let's not pretend that restorative practices doesn't have consequences.
Got it.
Okay. There's a different pathway to the consequences, and that's the second part of it. So one way is to make it collaborative. We get together and the kids involved, or the kids or whoever's involved, parents, whoever's involved in this, the teachers, and we negotiate the consequences.
Okay.
And the kid has a voice in this.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean they get veto power,
Sure.
but they're part of the process.
Yep.
Okay. So they don't feel like it's just something done to them.
Right.
Secondly, consequences should be relevant. That's why restoration works, because it's a relevant consequence. So when my son was in middle school, he was on a school bus and he looks across the aisle and it's pretty empty. And it's not a packed school bus. There's a kid
Okay.
sitting in the seat over there and he's got a cigarette lighter. And this is an old frayed traditional school bus, and little threads are hanging from the back of the seat, and he's lighting them. They flare up and go out. And so my son, like a moth to a flame, is like he's like Star Trek teleporter. He was suddenly next to this kid, fascinated and watching it. And he wasn't doing it. He was just watching this kid. And then the kid tears off the back of his spiral notebook, cardboard, and sets it on
Set it on
fire.
fire, of
And that's what
course.
my son's brain kicked back then. And he jumped back to his seat that I don't be involved in
I
this
don't
thing.
want to, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a camera on the bus. And so I get called in as the character ed expert because my son's been setting fires. He wasn't doing it, but he
Right.
was
But he
he
was
was
next to the
close
person that
enough.
was.
Um, and this principal was a Neanderthal.
Mm,
And I said to him, I fully believe there should be consequences for this, right? But let's make them relevant so they learn something, so they're less likely to do this in the future.
right.
Because very often punishment breeds more misbehavior. So one counselor told me that you whack a kid metaphorically, whack him
Hmm.
for doing a misbehavior, and two more he'll engage in worse or more misbehaviors later because he's angry and he's alienated and whatever. You didn't solve it.
Hmm.
You think you did, but you didn't.
But you didn't.
He'll be in my office later for what he did. Okay.
Mm.
So this principal actually said to me two things. He said, my uncle had a farm and he
Okay.
once taught me that sometimes the only way to get the attention of a mule is to whack him upside his head with a 2x4. And I thought, well, there's a heck of a metaphor for how we help
Right.
children
How you
develop
treating
character.
kids.
The
Right.
other one is, he says, you don't know this about me, Marvin, but I used to work in a prison as an
Hmm.
educator. And sometimes you just got to punish people so that they learn. And I said, how well I was thinking, how well are our prisons doing in that
Yeah.
regard? And I
That's
realized,
not
okay, you're not going to do it. So I went out and I found out that the National Firefighters Association has a curriculum for people who get in
okay.
trouble with setting fires. And so I signed my son up for it, and I took him, and he had to go through this whole thing with, watching videos and doing projects and all sorts of stuff,
Hmm.
because I wanted him to have a relevant consequence.
Sure.
So that relevance is, and participation is an important piece. The other one is just open communication, transparency. Right?
Right.
So I had a counselor once I trained who told me that he once had one of these he said, she said problems.
Hmm.
Kids got in a fight, or I don't remember what it was, something. They were brought before him, and he had nobody witnessed it, just
Mm.
the aftermath.
Yeah.
So all he had was one kid saying, this is what happened. The other kid saying, that's what happened. He had no way to find out. So he looked at the two of them and he said, I want to apologize in advance in case I get this wrong.
Okay.
He said, because all I've got is your two stories and I have no way of figuring this out. So here's what I'm going to do. And I'm sorry if I get it wrong. I'm doing the best I can. And
Okay.
here's the punishment. Here's the consequences. And so he did. He meted out consequences. But, then I'll give you the last one
Hmm.
is sometimes the consequences have to be structured so they're a solution, right?
Okay.
So one of my prime colleagues, Amy Johnson, a brilliant, been there, done it, award-winning middle school principal, then went on, got her doctorate with me, is now an international trainer and speaker about character education, although she's mostly being a grandma and a therapeutic horse woman, whatever it is now. But I still drag her into the work with me. When she was a
Hmm.
middle school principal, she had two girls who were constantly in fights. And so she called her parents, said, here's what I want to do. I want to put the two of them in a room together with a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and they can't leave till it's completed. And said, is there
Wow.
going and they says, there going to be an adult in there? I said, of course there's going to be an adult in there. Of course I'm going to have an adult in the room. Um, and they did. And by the time they were done, they found out they could get along with each
Okay.
other
Work
and they didn't
together.
fight anymore. But she said the problem was other kids who got in trouble heard about it. When they got in trouble, they came in and said, don't I get to do a puzzle? She said, no, that was a one-time deal for those
Sorry.
two girls. Sorry. So consequences, relevant, ideally restorative,
Hmm.
with negotiation, with transparency and communication.
Yes.
Um, that's the way to go about this stuff.
Okay, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And so that's a perfect segue into my next question because we talked about relationships a bit and how
Mhm.
they're at the core of what's impressionable for students and how they relate to each other and relate to community. But how do you see that connecting to the role of advisors, deans, and other student life leaders? I mean, it's so central, but we don't, in my opinion, spend enough time cultivating those relationships. And so,
Mm.
if when you're talking to these folks, how do you impress upon them how important relationships are?
You can't tell kids that they need to have relationships.
Hmm.
You want to model relationships. I remember I was giving guest lecturing at another university into one of their teacher preparation classes.
Okay.
Students were learning to be teachers and get their license.
Hmm.
And I asked them, what do they were all seniors. So I said, what kind of school do you want to work in? What do you want to teach? And so on. One kid, I said, I want to work at such and such high school.
Okay.
So that's an unusual answer because usually it's I want to teach math, I want to teach
Yeah.
kindergarten, I want to, whatever PE. I said, that's interesting. Why do you say that? Because he said, that's where I went to high school. And I
Yeah.
saw how well the teachers got along together. I want to be part of that community. And I thought, wow,
Wow.
you're a smart kid. Um, so I tell future teachers now all the time, when you're interviewing for jobs, if you have the luxury of choosing between possibilities, look closely at your new mommy or daddy, the principal, and look closely at your new siblings, the adult culture. That's how you pick the school.
Nice.
Because after that, the rest of it will fall into place.
It will. Yeah.
Um, so you need to model it. That's
Hmm.
part of it. Okay. But I don't think it's the main role of building relationships is the teacher and school-wide structures. That's where it happens. Okay. But you do want to model it and you want to preach it. You want to preach what you practice. In
Right.
this school, relationships are important. Now, the Amy Johnson story is a good example of a special case where you really need to intervene.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend and colleague Bob Selman, who's retired recently as a professor at Harvard after his whole career there,
Mm-hmm.
um, he wrote a book called Making Friends in Youth. He was a therapist and a developmental psychologist, and he worked with kids that had challenges in interpersonal behavior. They were
Okay.
aggressive, they didn't have friends, and, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So right now there's the whole field of social emotional learning,
Right.
which is great for helping kids develop the skills and capacities they need to make friends. But Bob
Mm-hmm.
took the kids who are really, really already damaged goods, and he worked intensively in peer pair therapy
Okay.
to get them to learn about friendship through the way they interacted with him in therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes they became friends. So you have way on one end of this spectrum. I'll give you another bizarre example. My wife was a geriatric social worker,
Okay.
and she had a man, a very old man, who was widowed at this point, who had become a recluse. And he became a recluse for a couple of reasons. One was because his physical appearance was pretty off-putting. His teeth were rotting. He hadn't cared for him. He wouldn't smile because of that, and so on. But the other was he had no clue how to have a positive interaction with another person.
Wow.
And what she did, her therapy was spending time with him in his apartment. First, she got his teeth fixed. She
Okay.
got, what she needed for
Yeah.
that. And then she spent time just practicing greeting, shaking hands, looking into the eye, smiling. Hal Urban, who's another icon in the field of character ed, who's a high school teacher for 36 years, has written a wonderful book, one called Lessons from the Classroom
Mm.
for teachers. But he says the most important thing he ever did, simplest and most important thing, was stand in the doorway every year for 35 years, greeting every student. And he
Yep.
gave them the option. And a lot of people do that now. First it was a handshake.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, you want a high five, you want a hug, you want to elbow, whatever you want to do.
Yep.
I can do any of those things. He said he
Mm-hmm.
was stunned about how many high school kids wanted a hug
Wanted
from
a
the
hug.
6'5" former basketball playing man. But they said they never got a hug anywhere else.
Ah,
So you're modeling greeting, social skills, training social emotional competencies. That's a good thing for counselors to be doing, deans of students to be doing, teaching the social emotional competencies kids need, but building structures where in this classroom we sit in tables of 4 and we
mm-hmm.
rotate every month or 2 months so you have new people. Or you have a
Nice.
seating chart and you rotate everybody randomly. So they
Yep.
don't just get to sit next to their buddies and whack the kid in front of them on the back of the head.
Right.
They don't get to
Yep.
do that stuff. You do peer pair work all the time, cross age buddies, building relationships, vertical families in elementary schools where you have
Mm-hmm.
2 kids from each grade together. So you build these structures for relationships. Okay, I talked about relationships and the people who get left out.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I came up with some schools do, every classroom, homeroom, or advisory, because you're interested in
Yep.
advisories,
We're gonna go there next. Nice segue.
adopts an adult who doesn't have a homeroom classroom advisory. The
Oh, that's
principal, the
wonderful.
counselor, the secretary, the custodian, the cook, whomever it is. And they become part of your advisory or homeroom or, whatever it is.
I love that.
And they're told, they come in, they introduce themselves, the kids interview them, find out about them, and they're told you're now an honorary member of this class. Come in whenever you can. They can't come in that often, but
Right.
they can
But
pop in periodically, and then you strategically invite them when you're having your Halloween party, or you're
mm-hmm.
going on a field trip, or you're doing your class, play, or whatever it is you're doing, right?
Yeah,
Um, you invite them in, and then you find out their birthday, and you throw a birthday party for them.
absolutely.
That alone transforms the whole school culture
That
and
really
builds
does.
relationships with people that don't have them. Another example.
Love that. And so let's talk about advisory.
Okay.
Advisory programs is certainly a hot button topic for me this year and talking with other deans and folks on campuses. And so it often gets described as the heart of a school, but in practice can be either a scheduling afterthought or a missed opportunity. And so, from your perspective, what makes an advisory program meaningful? I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you think makes an advisory program meaningful?
Well, meaningful can be a lot of things. Okay.
Sure.
You can do advisories in a meaningful way that helps with academic remediation.
Sure.
It's a study hall with really good mentoring and a good structure that kids know they can go to their teacher that they're having trouble with. They can go to there from their homeroom and so that's one way to think about it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking in terms of character education.
Yes.
So to be successful in character education, it has to be about character and relationships, right? Um, it can't be a homeroom. It can't be a place you sit and just do your homework.
Right.
Um, and kids need that too, but they're wasting this incredible structure. So the first time I encountered this was Bob Hassinger,
Okay.
from a middle school. I'm going to forget the name. It was quite some time ago in
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania. He
Okay.
went on to be the superintendent eventually. But there was a school up in Maine called the Hyde School,
Oh,
which
I
is
know the high.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a residential school that Joe Galt came up with. His son Malcolm now runs it. For kids that just weren't making it in traditional high school. So they'd
Right.
go to Maine if they could manage the funding. I don't know how the funding works, and they'd be there. And they came up with some of these ideas. So
Mm-hmm.
Bob Hassinger was at a workshop for the Hyde School. He said, let's see if we could put that in a traditional public middle school. And what he came up with is kids were assigned to an advisory.
Mm-hmm.
They were multi-aged. So there were 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in the advisory. That's a key piece, building
Yep.
relationships across grades.
Mm-hmm.
It was looped, so you stayed with the same teacher and the same kids as long as you were all in the same school, right?
Yep.
8th graders would graduate, new group of 6th graders would come in, and so on. And every day was a different theme. So like one day it might be service to the school. Another day it might be community service. Another day it might be cooperative intramural sports.
Mm-hmm.
Another day, it could be all different kinds of things. One day
Sure.
would be a character lesson. Transforms the school. So I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Amy Johnston, who did the jigsaw puzzle.
Yep.
She copied this in her middle school,
Okay.
but she had no curriculum. That's going back to your point about the curriculum you were saying to me earlier. That some of the teachers loved it. Some of the teachers were petrified. There's a nice little
Mm-hmm.
video about Amy's journey, and one of the teachers says, this was on a Wednesday. I had a stomach ache every Wednesday for the whole
No.
year because I was so nervous about this.
About doing this. Mm-hmm.
Because some of the teachers said, where's the curriculum? She says, no curriculum. So, well, what are you supposed to do? She said, talk to the kids. Talk about what? About them, about you. I don't care. Just talk to them. And some of the teachers, took to it like a duck to water.
Right.
Some of the teachers, and this is a great lesson on teacher preparation, are uncomfortable talking to kids.
Mm-hmm.
I come from psychology. I'm not trained as a teacher. I assumed all teachers like talking to kids. I assumed all teachers know how to lead school discussions, classroom discussions, and lead a discussion. And what I discovered was no,
Not
nobody's
at all.
training them to do this, and and that's a huge gap in teacher preparation.
Absolutely.
But that's what Amy did.
Mm-hmm.
Another school, a high school I know, they had the students write the lessons, and another middle school did this also. They had a team of students that created the lessons and delivered the lessons. So there was at Ridgewood Middle School, phenomenal middle school story. We have a whole full-page article in USA Today about the school. Tim Crutchley and Kristen Pelster were the principals, and Kristen now is a leader in character education internationally too.
Nice.
Got her doctorate with me. But they had a group of, I don't know, it was like 60 kids, 50 kids in a class. That was a 4-credit class where they were in charge of this. So they would do service projects and other things, run events, but they would also prepare the lesson every week. And 2 of them were in each of the advisories, and they would lead the lessons. Now, in that high school, one year they decided they want to adopt Sean Covey's curriculum. He had a curriculum for that they could use for advisory. So they abandoned the student-led, written and led ones, and they adopted Sean Covey's stuff. In the middle of the year, the students protested. They said, no, we want to write our own. And so they spent all this money on it. They just jettisoned it, and they went back to the students leading this. There are curricula out there.
Yeah, sure.
The Responsive Classroom has an advisory book that is a great structure for this.
Uh-huh.
The key is building relationships, teacher to kids, kid to kid, and talking to them about things that are relevant that they care about, building a community of these kids because they
Right.
start taking care of each other.
Exactly.
Okay. I always just say this, that middle school model was brilliant, but
Hmm.
unfortunately people don't do it. The real middle school model is that sixth graders were put on the face of the earth to be prey. Eighth graders were put on the face of the earth to be predators, and seventh graders were put on the face of the earth to be a demilitarized zone between them. And they actually build schools with the eighth grade wing is a one way, a sixth grade wing, and they schedule
Seventh grade
lunch
in
so
the
the
middle.
sixth graders eat, then the seventh graders, then the eighth graders, so that they kind of think that if you ever put a sixth grade, eighth grade together, that's what
It's
will lead to Armageddon. That's where the end of days will come because of sixth grader, eighth grader, and they think
uh,
that's the natural state of things. You do this kind of multi-age advisory, that all goes away because
yeah,
the eighth
it
graders are
does.
now finding out that they're protectors for the sixth graders,
Yep.
um,
There you go.
and it gets rid of it. So
Yep.
those are
So
those are some answers for you.
I want to go back to this whole notion of that because you're teachers, that you'll be good advisors and good relationship builders, because, that is a common mistake that people make
Hmm.
that we don't talk about when you interview for a job at a school. They talk about your pedagogy, they talk about all these sorts of things, but they don't talk about being an advisor and building relationships. And so,
Yeah.
that structure, that's important. So what do you tell the woman who has a pit in her stomach every Wednesday because they are deathly afraid of doing this thing? How do you help those folks?
Well, two ways. First is prophylactically before it happens
Yes.
in your teacher prep curriculum, your counseling master's degree, whatever degree deans or students get, I don't know. But and for principal training, you
Hmm.
start to train them. One,
Okay.
I think I don't even know if I said this here. I don't know where I say this all the time, but Keith Marty, who's one of the finest superintendents I've known, just
Hmm.
retired, once said to me, Marvin, the problem with leadership preparation programs in America's colleges and universities is they don't teach future principals how to have difficult conversations with adults,
Yes. Yes.
and we have to rectify. So it's all of this is prophylactic preparation in advance.
Okay.
Then it becomes in service professional development. If you're going to implement something like Amy Johnson's advisory without any curriculum,
Hmm.
then you need to do the professional development. She just gutted through it because she didn't know, and eventually it
Hmm.
worked. The interesting thing with her is the first year they did it one day a week for 28 minutes.
Wow.
And teachers were resistant. They didn't want to do it. And then they all started clamoring for it to be more days of the week after the
Oh,
first year.
nice.
They said, this is so cool. The kids thought it was so cool. They said the best thing that happens in this school is having this advisory. We just sit and talk to each other about cool things and so on, not knowing how much they were building school culture. By the way,
Right.
Amy Johnson's data will knock your socks off in terms of the drop in misbehaviors and the increase in academic state achievement scores from
Wow.
doing this kind of work. And we see
Hmm.
this again and again and again. So it's not just a feel-good thing. A lot of people think, well, character ed, on the one hand,
Hmm.
academics on the other hand, we just don't have room on our plate. And the answer that somebody came up with, no one knows who, is character ed is not another thing on your school plate. It's the
Not an
plate.
add-on. Yeah.
It's the plate. It's changing the way
It
we do
is the plate.
everything. It's a way of being. Um,
Yeah.
so a lot of this is about preparation, and
Hmm.
then the support group.
Yes.
So for instance, when I go in, ideally, if everybody gives me the time, no one gives you the PD time anymore. But if I
Hmm.
go in and I do, for instance, class meeting training, what
Hmm.
I want to do is tell them, here are your next steps. Every faculty meeting from now on, there's 2-3 minutes at the beginning where they say, does anybody have a success story they want to share for class meetings? Does anybody have a rough spot that could use help, smoothing out? And you
Love
do
that.
that every time. And then I come in 3 months later and we do a whole hour in which they share struggles, successes, and I don't even give them the answers
Yeah.
because I'm modeling for them the self-help. When somebody says
Hmm.
to me, well, I got this one kid that it just dominates the talk and I can't, I don't know what to do about it. I know what to do about it, but I don't say
Right.
that. what I say is, anybody here have a suggestion or a success? So I'm trying
Hmm.
to get them to be a
Good to,
collaborative learning
yep,
community.
and support each
And so
other.
doing those kinds of things is a way you get through all of that. But somebody's got to name the beast,
Right.
because I tell principals all the time, your most important job of everything you do is building the adult culture in the school.
Modeling the behavior.
And nobody tells you that, and nobody gives you the skills and competencies to do that. Nonetheless, that's the most important thing you have to do.
I love that. And so, we talked a bit about intrinsic motivation earlier, and I love how you talk about kind of what really sticks with students, and it's not the shiny things.
Right.
And so, what are some ways that, in advisory in particular, you can create conditions that encourage students to internalize values rather than just chase rewards?
You one is to have these deep discussions. So let's
Hmm.
say the school has a set of core values, virtues, strengths,
Hmm.
whatever they call them, right? So many schools do. It's very common. And it's a good thing. It's not required, but it's a good thing. It's
Right.
helpful. Gives you something to hang, your ideas on and your actions and so on.
Yep.
If you have them, the advisory would be a good place to just have these open discussions. What does this mean to you guys?
Hmm.
What does it look like? What are places where you think you haven't been respected,
Mm.
or you have been? Places you failed to show respect, or you've respected somebody. Let's talk about these things and share them and work so they become real, fleshed out, connected to real life, relevant and meaningful.
Yes.
But you can also use advisories if you don't have these um, set of words to
Hmm.
generate them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you have the advisories together discussing them and coming up with their list. It funnels in perhaps the student government where they distill it. Then the parents and the teachers do the same thing. Then you have a mixed group that comes together and takes what each of the groups came up with and you generate them. The other thing you do is, I said, schools are generational organisms.
Hmm.
So let's say you're middle school. Every 3 years, it's a totally new group of kids. If you're a high school, every 4 years, totally new. And
Right.
teachers turn over too. Different
Yeah,
rates, but they turn over.
absolutely. Sure.
So you need to revisit your core values on a regular
On a
basis.
regular basis.
And sometimes they are simply just reaffirmed,
Right.
right? That's okay, but you discuss them, you talk about them, you question them, you test them. And if there needs to be a change, you make a change. Advisories can be an important part of that as well. Um,
Absolutely.
so there's all sorts of ways advisories can be, and then advisories can be places that do service. So
Yes.
if you have age segregated advisories, your seniors go into the ninth grade classrooms or advisories
Hmm.
and they do lessons on it. Or your fifth graders go into the kindergarten or first grade, second grade class, and they do lessons on it.
Love that.
So they can take it on as their role. Um, a lot of schools will go way beyond the words to
Hmm.
definitions of the words, behavioral anchors. What does it look like? Rubrics. I've seen schools where the kids create the rubrics once the words are out there.
Okay.
They come up with the levels of it. It's
I love
theirs.
that.
So another school where the kids have definitions of the character traits, parents have definitions, and teachers. And they had a trifold character report card. This was a school in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
And the kids, every quarter, the kids rate themselves using the kid definitions. Their parents rate them, their character, using the parent definitions, and their teacher rates them using the teacher definitions. There's all sorts of ways to do that.
Wonderful. And so for folks listening today, I'm like, yes, this all sounds great, but it also sounds totally overwhelming by all the demands of their role and everything that they have to do. And like how, yes, I want to do this, but like, I don't even know where to start. What's one small step they could take tomorrow to strengthen their advisory program or bring a primed approach into student life?
Okay, so let me start with saying two prefacing statements.
Okay.
One is character education is rocket science. It is complex. It is
Hmm.
difficult. It is a journey. Okay, it doesn't happen fast. There are missteps and bumps and so along the way, and you have to embrace that reality before you start.
Yeah.
The second one is I tell people there are two secret ingredients you could have to help you be successful with this. The
Okay.
first one's patience.
Yes.
And the second one is magic fairy dust. And if you're all out of magic fairy dust, you have one
All you
option
got is
left.
right.
You
That's
got
all
to
you
be
got
patient.
left.
This is a journey and it takes time. Be collaborative, expect it. So that's the preface.
Okay.
Okay. There are lots of possible starting points. Okay. If you're a dean of students, first learn more about it, study it. Whether you read my book, Hal Urban's book, Tom Lacona's book, you get a master's degree, a doctoral degree in this. You take a course in it. You go to a conference. You watch a podcast a lot. Start learning about this.
Right.
Okay, and then find allies.
Okay.
Find others in the school who are interested with you. Then pay real close attention to the role of the principal.
Mm-hmm.
You may not be able to get your principal on board, but you may. Okay. David Straight, who was one of the leaders of the Center for Spiritual and Ethical Education, had written a couple of books on self-determination theory.
Okay.
A great model. He's got a new one coming out, and the opening chapter in it, because I was asked to write a blurb for it, so I read
Okay.
it, read the draft. The opening chapter is the story of a school somewhere in Oregon, I believe, where it was a really troubled school, failing
Mm.
school, or difficult urban elementary school. And I think it's the counselor decided to go deep into self-determination theory and build structures that build relationships and belongingness, and sense of competence, and empower kids and give a sense of autonomy. And started being so successful that her principal got on board and joined her in this incredible mission they were on. And
Mm-hmm.
they turned this school around, complete turnaround, amazing success story. And
Nice.
then the school district, which had 17 elementary schools, saw this, moved the principal and the counselor to another really struggling elementary school,
Okay.
and they did it
They did
again.
it again.
And now it's district wide.
Wow.
So getting the principal on board is really critical, but showing success, even one teacher in a classroom showing success, and other teachers go, what are you doing there? Not everybody jumps on board.
Yeah.
I always say, start with those who are willing. Find
Mm-hmm.
your kindred spirits. Work collaboratively. Then start bringing over some of the people who are on the fence sitters. Okay? And
Gotcha.
those willing teachers are the ones who will bring in some of their peers. Okay? And that's how you build the momentum for something like this. But be informed, know what you're doing, do what works. That's why I do what I do. That's
Mm-hmm.
why the Prime book is out there, because it's looking at the research and saying, here's what works. But I'd start the conversation with adults,
Okay.
ideally with the principal leading it,
Mm-hmm.
and saying, I need, even if the dean of students could do it just in the dean of students domain, say to the rest of the staff of the school, I need your help figuring this out.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. What ideas do you have? What have you seen? What do you know? Because you're modeling empowerment and
Modeling.
voice and collaboration, and a shared mission. But I would also say another first step for everybody is the mirror. Who am I? What's my character? How do
Mm-hmm.
I function? What can I do differently every day so I'd be better at this? And how can I make it my purpose to be better?
Yep.
Now, I heard a great quote today on the radio from Pablo Picasso.
Okay.
Meaning is figuring out your gift. Purpose is sharing it with others. It's
I
wonderful.
love that.
I'm going to start
I
I heard it this
love
morning, just this
that.
morning,
That's
hours
awesome.
ago, and I've already embraced it. I love this.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
find your noble purpose. Start there. Then
Start there.
become the kind of person and educator who embodies what will serve your purpose. Then figure out how you can implement it in your role.
I think that's a perfect place for us to end our conversation here. Marvin, this was awesome. And so I want to make sure that people know where they can find you. And I want you
Okay.
to also promote your books again. So tell
Mhm.
us where they can find you. Tell us the 2 books that you have out now and all the other
Yeah.
things that you're up to.
Well, easiest way to get in touch with me is by email.
Okay.
Okay. And that's my last name, Berkowitz, which hopefully they've seen somewhere.
Yes, and we'll put all this stuff at the end of
Okay,
the podcast as well.
at UMSL, it's University of Missouri, St. Louis, Berkowitz at UMSL, .edu. That's
Okay,
my email address.
got it.
The book Prime for Character Education and the new one for coaching are both published by Routledge.
Okay,
And you can get them from Routledge Publishing Company, but you can get them on Amazon too.
okay,
So it's Prime for Character Education, Prime to Compete. It's the
awesome.
name of the two books. There are other ones, but those are the ones you probably
Okay,
most want. And for the deans of students, the Prime for Character Education is probably the one they want.
gotcha. Okay, now before we close, you have a couple of minutes or time for his lightning round questions.
By all means.
All right, let's go. So, the best piece of advice you've ever received from a mentor?
Do what's right.
Okay, very simple. I love it. Coffee or tea?
Nowadays, coffee, but I like them both.
Okay.
I start my day needing the caffeine.
Okay, fair enough. One thing you wish every school leader understood about character education?
It is the primary purpose of school, and you as the leader are the most influential element in making it happen.
Awesome. And lastly, if you weren't doing this work, where would we find you instead?
I'd be a member of Monty Python if I could. Too late. But otherwise, it's on the soccer pitch, playing soccer or watching soccer nowadays.
Oh, gotcha. I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And thanks for pulling up a chair at the table today. I hope this conversation with Dr. Berkowitz was a reminder that character education isn't an add on, but the foundation of strong school communities. At the heart of it all, whether in advisory, mentoring, or day to day moments with students, are relationships. When we prioritize connection, empowerment, and modeling, we not only teach values, but we create spaces where students can truly thrive. If you're enjoying the table, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave us a comment. It really helps more people find us. And as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time at the table. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Table Podcast Series. Is your student life program delivering on your mission? Our new K-12 student life assessment moves you beyond anecdotes to evidence-based decisions. Through comprehensive stakeholder surveys and expert analysis, you'll get concrete insights across 8 essential dimensions of student life, from culture and wellness to staff effectiveness and resource allocation. We're seeking founding partner schools to be the first to experience this transformative assessment process and help shape the future of student life evaluation. Today's episode was hosted by Bridget Johnson in conversation with Marvin Berkowitz, produced and edited by Andrick Sigmund, and music by PremiumBeat.com. For any questions, contact information can be found in the episode description. And, as always, thanks again for listening.